we're going to sponsor people who we see promoting us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because that shows us you have that ability. You have the ability to market yourself and our products. And so, yes, we want to work with you.
Hey, y'all. I'm Angie Thompson. This is the Fishing Business Podcast. I'm going to jump right in this week because I've got a guest that I want to introduce you to that I'm very excited about. Her name's Tammy Foshee, and she's the president of Big Bite Baits, which is a tackle company located in Eufaula, Alabama. And Tammy has been very involved with high school fishing, from being a coach to being the parent of a high school angler to being a sponsor of high school fishing. So if you are a high school angler, this is the show for you. Tammy's a great person to learn from about how you can learn more about the business of fishing, maybe get some sponsors for your team, and just have a better experience as a high school angler. Here we go, y'all. Tammy Foshee with Big Bite Baits. All right, this week, Tammy is with us, and I'm so excited about having you on the show, Tammy. I've known you for a good long while, and you're one of the women in the sport of fishing that I admire a lot. And now you grew up not far from where I grew up in Eufaula, Alabama, which is, I mean, it may be like the cradle of the bass fishing world, right?
Bass capital of the world. That's what they say on the side.
That's right. That's right. Well, so tell us about how you grew up in a fishing family. You can't grow up in Eufaula and not be in a fishing family, I don't think.
No, you have to have some exposure, that's for sure. But I actually, I was born in Birmingham, Alabama, and it's to just a huge outdoor family. I mean, both my granddads hunted and fished. I can remember going to Gunnersville Dam and climbing down on the rocks with a cane pole when I was little with my granddad, and going out in a little tin boat with my other granddad, trot line fishing and stuff like that when I was younger. And when I was 7, my dad was hired by Don and Tom Mann to come to Eufaula and work for them,
Wow.
which of course he loved. We had already spent, I don't know how many weekends camping in Eufaula so he could come down and fish tournaments here, because he used to be in a bass club that would go around the state and fish tournaments, and all the family would hop in the camper and go with him, and picnic awesome. and fun stuff while he was out on the water. So he loved the area, and this is just paradise for him.
Absolutely.
So we moved to Eufaula, and he worked with them for a long time. And so I grew up around the fishing industry.
Mm-hmm.
Not only did my dad work for Mann's and other companies in the industry, but, like my Sunday school teacher was the head of Humminbird. And I mean, there's so many companies in this area, and we all knew each other, and it was like one big family.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And I don't know if a lot of the young people out there listening to this, they may not know about all of the companies that have kind of sprung out of Eufaula, but Tom Mann was really sort of let's see, don't you think he kind of really innovated most of where we are with plastic worms? Would you say that?
He did, because, there are several companies that claim to have the first worms, but definitely a lot of people think of Tom Mann's jelly worm. His originally jelly worm is one of the originals and most successful.
Right.
That, in the start of the industry. And, he was, kind of like a Kevin Van Dam of his age.
That's right.
It was brand new. Tournament fishing was brand new. There wasn't a such thing as a Humminbird depth finder back then. Right. He helped create the first one. So he had his hands in a lot of different businesses, because he was trying to put his fishing game, move it further down the line. And a lot of companies came together because of his ingenuity, I think.
Yeah, agreed. And Humminbird was one of them, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah. And so, and now, so then you go, okay, so you grow up, you move to Eufaula, you grow up there, you go off to school at that awful school you went to. Tammy went to the University of Alabama.
University of Alabama up there.
Oh, I'm so sorry. But
Roll Tide.
Where you go? Okay, so but you majored in finance. So was that a conscious effort to say, I'm not going to work in the fishing industry. I'm going to go be a banker or be a businesswoman in some other field?
No, I wouldn't say that. In fact, remembering this was in the 80s, I don't think I ever thought I would have an opportunity in the fishing industry.
Really?
I mean, a woman,
Yeah.
I just thinking back in that day, things were different. And I was really good at math. And my dad and my mom both recommended, oh, you're good at math. Accountants do well. You should go in accounting. So, and we were all Alabama fans. And of course, they wanted me to go to Alabama, which had the best accounting school in the South. Anyway, so that's how I ended up at Alabama. And I ended up in accounting. But my junior year, I took an investment class and just fell in love with researching the market and the economy, and just changed my major over to corporate finance instead of accounting because it's more interesting learning about the different companies and industries and so forth. And after school, I found a job with an investment group called Porter White and Yardley in Birmingham. Alabama was great about helping their students, find careers. So, and I worked with them for a while. There was a merger where they were acquired by someone else. Went to work for this new company for a while, but a little after that, I reactivated my resume because of the merger, and got a call from Books A Million. Clyde Anderson there, the CEO, was an Alabama grad, and he was looking for an analyst to come work for him. So I got the opportunity to work with the CEO and CFO of that company.
Wow.
And I did a lot of project work for them, things like everywhere from determining which location to what companies they wanted to acquire, and, equipment and systems for their stores, and ended up being promoted to a buyer. So I actually bought categories of books for a while, which was kind of interesting. And I didn't realize it at the time, but it had a lot to do with inventory management and marketing and how those work together. And so that I learned so much from that position. I can't tell you how much. I learned things I liked, I didn't like, I wanted to do, I shouldn't do.
What I'm good at, what I'm not good at.
Yes. A lot of people, when they get out of school, they think, oh, I want to do this, period. And they don't realize that, there may be other steps you need to take along the way, places you need to work, lessons you need to learn that will help you throughout your career. And
I love hearing these stories because there's, there's so much pressure on young people when they're 18 to decide what they want to major in and do for the rest of their life. And most of the people that I know that are the most successful and the most happy have had kind of a winding route to get to where they want to go. Just because they majored in something doesn't mean that I majored in visual arts, and it doesn't mean you end up with where, you have to kind of feel your way for a little while, don't you?
You do. And like I said, you learn so much along the way. I left there because I wanted to go back into really what my major was, which was finance. And so I went into banking, and I worked, as a credit analyst for a little while. And then I was fortunate enough to get to work in what we called our national corporate banking division, and actually became Midwest territory manager. So, people probably don't understand what that means, but basically I was calling on Fortune 500 companies.
Oh my gosh.
The CEOs and the CFOs. I was traveling out to the Midwest to meet with them, to learn about their companies, to help establish loan relationships or investment relationships or deposit, whatever services they needed. I was their relationship manager on behalf of the bank that I was working for.
Mm-hmm.
And I really love that, but the travel became a little much with that, with 2 young kids.
Yeah.
So once you have kids, that changes a little bit. But what I really loved the most was learning about all of these companies, hearing the stories of the CEOs, how things started, what processes worked and didn't work, And I guess one of the questions you said that you were probably going to ask me had something to do with how did I get back into fishing?
Yeah, right. I'm sorry. We need to circle. I'm so interested in everything you're saying, but we do need to circle around to how did that wind back? Before we do that, though, I did want to say, now you realize Clyde Anderson is this Anderson family that owns Bass, right? I don't know everybody else out there.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Same Anderson family that owns Bass and Bassmaster now. So that's an interesting connection there. And they've done an incredible job. But their business, Anderson Merchandising, started with the book business and writing books and magazines and that sort of thing.
And like I said, I learned so much from him.
Oh, I bet.
I really did.
Brilliant business people. Yeah. So, okay. So then how'd you get back to the fishing, the big bite baits?
Well, the way Big Bite came into what was meeting with all these companies, learning so much, it gives you the desire to start your own, to write your own story, And my daughter at the time, she was 2, she had some health issues that made me have to work part-time for a little while for the bank so that she could be kept at home and grow healthier. And when that happened, I had a little extra time on my hands. Mothers never do, but we always say we think we do. Right. And I'd always been really good with computers. So my dad had just started a new company and wanted to see if I could build a website for him because he wanted to be able to reach out to more international customers. So I told him I would give it a go. And I did, and it was successful, and they loved it. But they noticed that most of the customers that were coming to them were retail customers, people who wanted to buy things. And they weren't a company that sold to the public.
Right.
So it got me thinking, well, if this simple website that I built for him could attract all of these retailers, why not try doing the same thing? And what do I know? What have I grown up around? Fishing.
Right.
And my brother was also working in fishing as well. And he was an avid angler. He knew what anglers wanted and needed. So we had a conversation about, if we were to start a website, what should it be named? What should it, offer and so forth. So we decided, instead of just offering other people's products, let's start our own brand and just see what happens. So he came up with a name, which he said he'd never been to a weigh-in where he didn't hear somebody say, I couldn't find the big bite or finally got the big bite. Or, so he was like, it's got to be Big Bite Baits. That's
a great name. And when was this, Tammy?
This was in 1999.
Okay. So
20 years later.
Yeah. Wow.
I designed the logo. I don't have your artistic ability, but with a computer, I can get pretty good. And so I designed the logo. I designed the website. He came up with our product line and the name, and we kind of divvied up what each one would do. And we had over 30,000 in sales the first year.
Wow.
So it was just,
Yeah.
As my mom likes to say, build it and they will come.
Yeah.
If you believe in it and you build it and you work hard,
And 20 years later, you're a major player in this in the fishing tackle industry, in my opinion. And
so we started very simple. And, later we started bringing on pros and designing more baits. We've always had the goal of, everything's quality, everything's proven to catch fish. It's not gimmicky, baits that are going to work.
Right.
So, and
I guess your brother Scott probably has to field test everything to make sure
of course, of course.
But hey, that it does make me wonder though, when you earlier you talked about how you really learned a lot about inventory and marketing. How did that relate back to running Big Bite Baits?
Oh, I mean, like I said, every position that I've worked in, whether, it be credit analytics, I mean, I have to look at the credit of, tackle shops that carry our baits that we give credit to. I mean, the merchandising and warehousing that I learned at Books A Million, I put into place every day here.
Yeah.
So, I mean, everything I've done was, I like to say, God's way of preparing me for the future.
Absolutely. It's like everything ties back together with this business.
Yes.
And that I just love that. And I think that can happen for a lot of people. It doesn't necessarily have to be that you've started a company or you're a manufacturer. But I think if you're aware and you pay attention to what you like, as we said, and what you're good at, as we said, you can find your path. That's the way to find your path, is keep following those things. And the path will become clear to you in most cases, I think. So tell us about how Big Bite Baits is involved in high school fishing. How'd you get involved in? Because I have to tell you, I think a long time ago, I had to call. It was years ago in my role at Bass. For some reason, I needed to speak to someone who knew a lot about high school fishing in Alabama, and I was given your name. Do you remember that we spoke?
So.
Well, we didn't know each other then, but it was like everybody said, "Oh, if you need to know anything about high school fishing in Alabama, you need to talk to Tammy. She's the one to talk to."
Well, I first got involved and found out about high school fishing really because I had a couple of teams approach me about sponsorship. I didn't even know that there was high school fishing at the time, and it really piqued my interest. But really, how I really jumped in was when my little girl, who was 14 at the time, wanted to fish. She had been out fishing with my brother, caught an 8.5 pounder.
Oh my gosh.
And of course that's going to spoil you right off.
Yeah.
And asked if she could go with us to the Bassmaster Classic. It was in Oklahoma.
Oh, in Tulsa.
And so that was her first exposure to the industry, which just blew her mind.
Oh,
and she met some college anglers and she met some high school anglers while she was there. And some of those high school anglers invited her to come back and see their weigh-in, which was just that next weekend for a tournament they were having up at Smith Lake. So she asked, she was only 14, she couldn't drive. Mom, will you please take me? I want to see what this is all about. So we go up there and we watch, and we're watching these boys cross the stage and hold up their fish. And, they're all so excited. And about midway through the tournament, she turns around to me and she says, Mama, why can't I do this? And I didn't know what to say. I was like, okay, we'll look into it. I'll sign you up for some junior bass tournaments. And you can get your feet wet and see if this is really something you like or not. I know you like catching fish, but can you really handle a tournament? Because I knew what tournaments were like.
Yeah, right.
And I know how hard that they can be, how early in the morning and so forth. So I put her in a junior little league that they had and the first tournament was on Gunnersville. And of course, first tournament, she wins the big bass of the tournament, cashes a check.
Oh my gosh.
So there was no turning back at that point.
Yes,
right. This was something she enjoyed, she wanted to do. But when it came to fishing for her school, there wasn't a team. And I reached out.
She wasn't at Eufaula.
No, we lived in the Birmingham area. We lived in a city called Gardendale.
Yes. Okay.
So this was Gardendale High School.
Gotcha.
And there was not a team. And when I approached people to try to ask about it, they all basically said, we'd like to have one, but nobody's ever been able to get it approved.
Yeah.
So I went to the principal and talked to him about it, and he was absolutely against it because he was afraid of the liability. And I think part of it was it competed with baseball. they felt like, and they didn't want another sport during that season. But I found out from talking to other people that you didn't have to be a part of the school, that you could actually establish a team as a club outside the school. So it's kind of like park ball or, some other. So I talked to some of the teams I had been sponsoring to kind of just find out how you get things started. And it took us about a year and a half to get it started because we had to, jump through, setting everything up. And we had our first introductory, like a meeting for everyone to come and find out about it. We had 88 kids show up to find out about the fishing team.
That's incredible.
It was great. We had so much interest. Now, when it came down to signing up, not, all of those signed up. I think we started our first year with 12 team members. But by the time she graduated, we had 67 team members. And it was a part of the school as a sport because they recognized over time just how great it was for kids.
Oh, yeah.
And I actually was the coach.
Right. I love that.
I tried to find other people who had better fishing skills than me. I'll tell you that. But there just wasn't anyone willing to take it on. And I wasn't willing to not let this opportunity be there for my child. So,
well, God bless you. I'm so glad you did that. The rest of us are grateful for you for doing that. And I feel like I need to tell viewers that Tammy's daughter, Laura Ann, who is remarkable and really an unbelievable woman, was an intern for us last summer. And so I know Laura Ann really well. And like I said, she's an incredibly talented woman, very talented, and is now went on to get a full ride scholarship to college, right, at SCAD, which is
or fishing.
Fishing, full ride fishing scholarship at SCAD, which was not, I was so surprised when I met Laura Ann and she told me she was at SCAD because it wasn't the school that you would think of as a fishing school, because it used to be the Savannah College of Art and Design. I don't know if they still call it that anymore.
They do.
But it's really an incredible school with a very diverse curriculum and not what you would typically think of as a fishing school, right?
No, and a lot of the fishing schools, really, you wouldn't often say it's a fishing school. I think where you're going to find these fishing schools that really excel are schools that have the ability to give the team more support, where maybe football and basketball aren't as big of a deal for those schools. So they do, support the fishing team.
Yeah, that's right. I love that, though. I think that's a great opportunity for all of us. So how big is high school fishing now? Do you know?
Oh, my goodness. I don't think anybody knows the exact numbers, and it's because there are so many different trails that can be fished, so that not one has all of the anglers registered. But I can tell you that the Student Angler Federation, I know that they already have 35,000 anglers registered for next year, for 2021. And I know that that's not all of the anglers, because there are so many that fish bass and not SAF, or fish, their local state tournaments and not the national tournaments. For instance, Alabama has Alabama Bass Nation. They have the ASA-BFA. They have the SAF. There's so many different trails you can fish just in the state of Alabama. Right. And I know Alabama has well over 2,000 high school anglers.
Yeah, that's great. Really great.
Just Alabama. So it's probably way north of 40,000. I don't know what that number is, but that's significant. And I know that Smithwick did a survey last year, in 1999, that said the average high school angler spends $658 per year on their equipment.
Wow.
So you multiply that times 40,000 anglers, and you're talking about over 26 million in impact to our industry.
That is incredible.
It's huge.
Yeah. And so more people should really be paying attention to that, I think.
Yes,
And
definitely.
people are. And we're going to talk more
Mhm.
about that. I'm going to take a real quick break right here. But when we come back, we're going to really kind of dig in on if you're a high school angler, some things that might be able to help you. Tammy's got some great advice to share on some things that might be able to help you. And then later, we're going to talk about if you're a marketer, how good practices for working with high school teams. So got a lot of good stuff coming up with Tammy Foshee from Big Bite Baits. We'll be right back. Do you know what your personal brand is? Because everyone has a personal brand. You may not be intentional about it yet, but all that you say or do or write or post contributes to how others perceive you. And that, my friends, is your personal brand. If you want to develop your brand and mean the things you want it to mean, I have a workbook that will help you get started, and it's free. You can download my Developing Your Personal Brand workbook at www.fishingbusinessschool.com/brand workbook. Oh, you're so good.
Oh,
So relaxed and so natural. You shouldn't hate it because you're good at it. All right. We're back on the Fishing Business Podcast with Tammy Foshee from Big Bite Baits. And Tammy has been very involved with high school fishing since the inception of high school fishing. We talked about it a little bit before the break, but now I kind of want to dig in on some practical advice, Tammy, for high school teams. What do you see high school teams doing well when it comes to business marketing, how they fish, but more of on the business side? What do you think they're doing good?
I think that high school fishing teams in general are doing good at promoting their sponsors. They really are. You see the parents and the kids showing up at events, and they've got banners with their sponsors on it. They've got their sponsors on their jerseys. They're promoting, they're supporting their team, their families are, and they're really providing a fun experience for all of the kids, which of course makes them love the outdoors and want to continue to do it in the future.
Yes. So. Okay, so let's talk about, because now we talked about your involvement as a sort of a coach and being involved on that side of it, but you're also Big Bite Baits is a sponsor of high school fishing. So as a brand, why is that important to you? Why is the fun family aspect of it, why is that important to you from a brand and a business standpoint? Because
this is our industry's future.
Mm-hmm.
These kids are going to grow up to be avid anglers if they have a good experience now.
Right.
And if they are using our products now and enjoying them and getting good results from them, then they'll be loyal customers later. So, of course, promoting and it's a great thing, but just seeing these kids fall in love with the sport and want to continue that into the future, that's so important.
Right. I wish more brands were involved with high school fishing. A lot are, but I wish more were. Sometimes I think it's a little bit tricky because there's not a lot of infrastructure to attach a brand to, and maybe we can figure out ways as we move forward to help the high school teams make that infrastructure, if that makes any sense.
Right.
You agree?
Well, I can tell you that high school teams need help.
Yes.
I mean, just from being a coach, it's extremely difficult for someone just to figure out how to start a team.
Right.
Organizations like Bass and the Student Angler Federation are doing what they can to kind of post helpful things, but with these parents starting off, because it's usually a parent, trying to figure out how to start it and then jumping through the hurdles that the schools will often put in their way or their counties, or
right,
and learning the rules and regulations, and getting the kids signed up, making sure that they know what they need to do when it comes to not only their skills but safety.
Right.
Which is so important. And, I can tell you as a high school fishing coach, the thing that broke my heart most often was if I had a tournament and I had anglers that wanted to fish and I didn't have a way to get them on the water.
So you didn't have a boat.
You need a boat. You need a boat captain.
Right.
So sometimes kids would have a boat, but they couldn't find a volunteer to drive them.
Oh,
And in high school fishing, that's part of the rules. You have to have an adult,
right.
18 years or older, depending on the tournament trail, who will volunteer to give that day to those kids. Because, and there are a lot of anglers who could be doing that, but they don't want to sit in a boat and not fish all day.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that can be tough when you're an angler.
You're right. It can be. But, I think maybe that's an outreach that we need to do better at is explaining to people why that's so important
Yes.
and why that opportunity as a volunteer is so meaningful and
Right.
what it means to those kids in the long term. So, if you let's talk about that offline, you and I. What do you think? Oh, so that was one. So what do you think high school teams could do better? What do you think they could do better at?
I really think they could spend more time on safety training. I
Gotcha.
think that is something, no one wants to hear about, something horrible happening to a high school
Oh,
angler,
absolutely right.
like the issues, we've seen in the past couple of years.
Yeah.
A lot of these boat captains are just parents or grandparents or someone that has volunteered, but maybe don't have the training that they need to really know what they're doing. So you have people taking boats into areas where they shouldn't. You have people, trying to cross really rough water when they really shouldn't be doing that because it's just too dangerous. And
Right.
there's, I think, a lot that needs to occur from a training perspective that it just isn't happening because there's just not the infrastructure there
Right.
for these teams to reach out to.
Interesting. That's really interesting. I appreciate that so much, and my wheels are turning on how we might be able to help you with that. You've been around high school fishing for 7 or 8 years now at a pretty intimate level, and so I'm sure you can look out there and you can see new kids come into the sport, and you probably can tell right away this is the real deal. This one's going to do good. What are some of the qualities you see in these kids that you think they're going to be good?
When you see a genuine love for fishing in a kid, you see them out working. You see them out volunteering, doing things they don't have to do, just so that they can be on the water, near the water, help a company, whatever it is they're doing. And then, of course, the ones that you really notice are the ones that when they get up on that weigh-in stage and they're asked about their day, they speak.
Yeah.
They're instead of being shy or just saying, thank you, my sponsors, which is what you hear a lot. When you hear someone really get up there and tell about their day and tell about their individual sponsors and so forth, that's someone you want to talk to.
Especially if they can tell a story, right?
Oh, yes. Yes, definitely.
That's kind of my listeners are probably sick of me saying it, but I'm like marketing is stories. Marketing is storytelling. And when you're on the weigh-in stage, you have the perfect opportunity to tell a story. And we're trying to teach people how to be better at that because it's just important.
Well, and it's not just say it when you're catching them.
Yeah.
You got to be able to talk when you've had a bad day too.
That's right. Yeah.
It's always remembering to tell your story, like you said.
And you want to be able to, even when you've had a bad day, you want to tell the story without complaining.
Right.
Because there's still stories and everybody knows how it feels to have a bad day on the water, but nobody really wants to hear you complain.
Well, that's what I always told my kids on the team is you learn something every day you go fishing. You either learn what you should do or what you shouldn't do.
That's right.
But you learn every time. And that goes into the knowledge bank for next time.
That's
next time you're up against those circumstances, you know what worked or what didn't work. So that's going to help you be a better fisherman.
I love that. What advice would you give a high school fisherman about the business side of fishing, a high school team or a high school angler about the business side?
Well, I would say if it's someone who's wanting to get into the fishing industry business in the future, a lot of people think that they need to go get a marketing degree. And yes, marketing is good. I definitely take a marketing class. But if that's not your given talent, don't think you have to have a marketing degree.
Right.
Get your art degree, get your graphic design degree, get your finance degree, like me. Whatever you think is your passion, guess what? There's a company out there that's going to need someone in that field. And it's so important, I can tell you as someone who hires a lot of people, to find someone who has that fishing knowledge when you're hiring, because it's when it comes to a company in our industry, knowing about fishing is just as important as your other skills. So it's got to all work together. I can't hire a photographer who's never fished because they may shoot the bait upside down or in the wrong setting. So I have to look for people who have both fishing and their career knowledge.
Mm-hmm. And that goes all over your business. That's every position really. And if we all, every business in the outdoors, if all of our people were anglers, it would, unfortunately, sometimes you can't have because you can't find them. You can't find somebody that, we would have a hard time at our company finding accounting people who were fishing people. So, but if you did, like you said, it just makes
they're out there.
Yeah, they are out there. They are out there. Okay. So what advice would you give high school anglers? And I cannot wait to hear what you say about this because I've heard so many different takes. But what advice would you give high school anglers about how to get sponsors or getting sponsors in general?
When it comes to high school fishing, I would say build relationships and start local.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
especially for high school teams. Start with your local gas station, your local jewelry store, things you wouldn't even think about fishing related sometimes. But they're going to be the ones who support you the most probably.
That's right.
And they may not be giving you fishing equipment, but they may be giving you funds to help buy that gas or buy that equipment. Because a lot of the industry companies, it's hard to give a lot of money out in our industry. The margins just aren't there sometimes. So a lot of the companies give more discounts and so forth to help high schoolers and college anglers.
Right.
So I would say start local and then over time build relationships. If there are companies you want to work with, reach out to them, yes, but reach out to them at tournaments where they have or at sports shows and so forth. Tell them how much you love their products. And if there's really someone you want to work with, start working with them before you have a sponsorship. In other words, if you like someone's fishing lure and you're fishing with it all the time, post about it. Guess what? If you tag them, they're going to see it. And that when you walk up to their booth, they're going to recognize you because somebody has watched you making those posts.
That's right.
So if you want to build a relationship, do it over time. Don't reach out to somebody on social media and say, please send me a bag of I can tell you, we probably get, at least 50 a day.
Right.
50 a day.
Right.
There's just no way we can send everybody free lures. I wish we could. I wish we could, but and we do giveaways and things like that. But we're going to sponsor people who we see promoting us. Because that shows us you have that ability. You have the ability to market yourself and our products. And so, yes, we want to work with you because we're in business to make money and do business. So, and across the board, every company in the industry, they're looking to grow their company. So if you can help us do that, then we will want to work with you.
That's right. Got it. And then if you can do those things, if you can start a relationship, Let someone see you repeatedly. It's kind of like, the basic marketing skills you learn in marketing 101 is that it takes so many times for a consumer to see your message before it's kind of the same thing. If you can let somebody from the brand that you see at sports shows or at tournaments, if you can let them see you over and over again, whether it's in person or on social media, and they start to remember you, and it's all tied in with good storytelling.
That's right.
Home run. Home run. Big bite. Big bite.
That's right.
Okay,
right.
So what does Big Bite Baits? I got to go on to this because I know a lot of pro anglers and people who want to be pro anglers listen to this too. But what does Big Bite Baits look for in its pro anglers and its pro staff?
I would say a lot of the same thing, but number one to me is authenticity. Mm-hmm. I mean, be yourself. Don't be fake. Tell your story, not someone else's. And when it comes to marketing today for a professional angler, that's just as important as their fishing. Yeah. They've got to be able to market themselves. They've got to be able to talk. Mm-hmm. They've got to be able to promote, because and that's where they're going to do well. Like people like Gerald Swindle. I mean, he was on your podcast recently. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's so good at marketing.
Right, he is. He is. But you know what, Tammy? Everybody's not a Gerald Swindle. And I say that True. All the time. Everybody's not Gerald. Everybody's not funny. Everybody can't use humor the way he can. Everybody's not creative. But you have some other anglers that you have relationships with that don't have that kind of big, explosive personality. They have a different personality.
Right. And that's why I said be authentic. Mm-hmm. Because don't try to be funny if you're not funny. Right. You know what I'm saying? Be you. But tell your story, like you said, and
don't
really
you have to be
right.
Like I think some people kind of get discouraged sometimes when they look at the top stars of the sports and how self-possessed they are, and how easy the stories roll off their lips, and how organically they can tell stories and weave in their sponsor's brand message into those stories. Mm-hmm. But if that's not your natural gift, get better at it. But don't think you're done because you can't do that right now.
Right. I say if you look at our pros, it's a big mixture of different personalities. We have someone who's funny like Jeff Creek.
Yes.
But we also have great guys like Harvey Horn, who's out there working hard, and we've got guys like Russ Lane. Mm-hmm. He's not making people laugh. What he's doing is being creative. If you watch some of his posts, you'll see some of the artist in him come out with the way he takes pictures and does videos and so forth.
Oh, that's cool.
The different anglers we have all have their own talents and special abilities. Yeah. And it's just, like I said, be authentic and bring what you have to the table.
Right.
And don't think, I don't have a big media, so everybody can have a big media. It doesn't take being funny. Maybe you don't go viral as often as someone else, but people will still see you and follow you over time and learn from you. And
that's right.
When
you're authentic.
Right.
Because if you're not the funny guy, there's a lot of people out there that are also not the funny guy.
Right.
And there are also a lot of people out there that don't really care about the funny.
That's right. Some people aren't fans of the funny guy.
Right. Yeah.
They're more fans of the guy that's more like them.
Exactly. So, all right. Well, listen, I've been doing this lately, and I'm going to do it again here because I'm looking at the clock and thinking, golly, we've already been talking so long, but there's so much more I want to talk to you about. So I think what I'll do here is stop for this week, and we'll pick back up again next week, and we'll talk about how brands can better work with the high school angler. So this was a good deep dive for the high school angler out there. And then next week we'll talk about, I'm not going to ask you to give away any of your trade secrets, but I know you care about high school angling, and you guys have done a great job of it. So next week we'll talk more about how brands work with high school teams. Is that a deal?
Sounds good.
All right. All right, that wraps up the first part of our conversation with Tammy Foshee from Big Bite Baits. We're going to come back next week and talk about how brands in fishing can work with high school teams. This is a great conversation. She's very generous to share her knowledge with us. That'll be next week. Thanks for being with us today. I really appreciate it. Hey, if you will subscribe to our YouTube channel or subscribe and rate our podcast, it will help me out a lot. I'd really appreciate it if you would do that. All right, y'all, I'm going to close things out this week the way my favorite fisherman always closed out his TV show, The Fishing Hole, by saying this is dedicated to Dad because he always had time to take me fishing. See you next time, y'all.